For the past few weeks, Pete Buttigieg has had, I would say, pretty good media. They've been very inviting of him.
Pretty good.
They've been kind of in his corner.
America's golden boy.
He's been America's golden boy. But did you know that there are actually things from his past that might harm him if people start to look into them? And we have a person who did look into them, and that is Jonathan Larson of 2RT Investigates, who joins us on the show right now.
Hey guys.
How's it going? Welcome back to the show.
Thanks very much. Thanks for having me.
So you have a story up at 2RT.com right now about Buttigieg, police tapes, concerns over racism in police department. Can you break down what that story was about?
So there's a lot of moving pieces to this one. The existence of the tapes has been known for a while, since early on in Buttigieg's mayoral administration. What remains unclear is what's on the tapes. And in terms of what we did to advance that story is we got a hold of the settlement that Pete Buttigieg signed with the woman who got fired from the police department for her role in the tapes, laying out what the city's rationale was for wanting to keep quiet the contents on the tape, which specifically talks about the fact that if she shares what she knows from listening to the tapes, it could have a negative impact, quote, negative impact on some prosecutions. So that was one thing we found out. And then another was that it turns out there was another incident involving police with racial overtones the following year, and according to the head of public safety, the board of public safety for the city of South Bend at the time, city attorney was fired by Mayor Buttigieg for failing to block a request to have the Indiana State Police investigate that incident. So those were the kind of big overarching themes, but there was a lot more I heard while I was in South Bend as well, as I'm sure you saw in the article.
Hey, Jonathan, so the police chief who recorded the other officers was fired. The woman who reported the tape's existence was fired, and the city employee who didn't stop, what you just mentioned, didn't stop the
Indiana State Police, the request to have them investigate, that's right. The chief, I should point out, was not fired. He was demoted to captain. There's some controversy about whether he was asked to step down, whether he resigned and then rescinded it. That's in some dispute, but he remained on the force. He ultimately remained on the force. So there was one woman fired for the tapes, and then another woman fired allegedly for failing to block a request for an outside investigation by the Indiana State Police.
Okay, so this is something that I feel like when this conversation was happening on Twitter, a lot of people want to know, is it really realistically possible that Pete Buttigieg has no idea what's actually on these tapes?
Well, I mean, he says he's never listened to them, but the reality is that the woman who did listen to them, or at least 5 of them, right? Because there's hours and hours of these tapes, right? But she made tapes of these particular days. I think it's 8 days or so that were all ended up on 5 cassette tapes. And she put her a summary essentially of what she heard on those tapes in her tort claim filed with the city that summer, June 2012. And she says there were racial remarks. She says there was possible misconduct, and she talks about a scheme to influence the incoming mayor into how he would fill new positions in the police department under his administration. So that's all out there, and she talked to the media, and so her secondhand account of what was on the tapes, he's had access to, certainly.
So do we know, I assume that this is a little bit outside of the bounds of your investigation, but we have these things that we're certainly concerned about. There's an overall concern about racism in the police department. Do we know if outside of all of this, did he take actions that might allay some of those concerns?
So that was my thought. My interest was less in the tapes than in, well, is there a problem with racism within the force generally? And I spoke to multiple sources who had experience within and with the South Bend Police and the homicide unit that covers the county, and they gave me incidents that certainly sounded like racist language was used, if not other things. So I asked the Buttigieg administration and campaign, can you talk about what steps, if any, the administration took? And they sent a list last night they sent a response that included some things such as body cameras and trying to recruit more minority officers. But in terms of institutional systemic change, it doesn't seem that there was any kind of major reform.
Okay, and so you mentioned the response from the campaign. Obviously, you also asked them questions about what we've been talking about throughout this interview. How were they receptive to your questions?
Well, they were gracious and responded and all of that. So I can't. I'm just looking up the exact quote because I want to get it right. The spokesperson for the presidential campaign wrote that quote. So I sent him a list of questions dealing with a lot of things, including the involvement of one of his donors, who ended up backing someone, a candidate who was allegedly caught on the tapes and who I was told by multiple sources used racist language. So I asked a whole slew of questions, and the response was, quote, "These unsubstantiated allegations and rumors are too far-fetched to merit a response." And they went on a little bit to give a few more specifics about some of the structural things and some of the reforms I just told you about. But no, there were a lot of questions unanswered, such as a direct question: did you fire the city attorney for failing to block the request for the investigation? No direct response. And in fact, we asked a couple weeks ago for the 2011 campaign disclosure records from his first mayoral campaign, and still haven't gotten those.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure that's it. No one will ask any follow-up questions. They'll be on the debate stage. No one will ask about it. So this strategy should probably work.
But we know what type of music he'd like to walk out to if he won.
Exactly. Jonathan, great work here. Hopefully we'll get some more information, as time goes on, and maybe they'll be a little bit more cooperative. But great work in finding out all this.
Yeah, well, it was a lot of stuff that we hit them with. So maybe additional answers are forthcoming. We'll see. Thanks so much, guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for watching this clip from the Damage Report. If you liked it, don't forget to subscribe to this channel and ring the bell on YouTube to get notifications of our new videos. And of course, you can catch the full Damage Report live every weekday at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific on TYT Network on YouTube TV.